Now it's time for an original content presentation. Please welcome Groceryshop Senior Vice President of Content, Krystina Gustafson, for a presentation on the grocery Zeitgeist.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the final keynote of the morning. Well, those of you like me who are intimately familiar with morning cartoons from the 80s may be aware that this year marked the birth date of George Jetson. Now, I'm aware he's a fictional character, but it's relevant today because the Jetsons opened our minds and imaginations to the way technology could shape our future world. It's fitting then to be talking about him here today at Groceryshop, where that same curiosity has brought us all together to imagine the ways technology will shape the future of our industry, grocery. But with a galaxy of change, there are a few trends that become so notable, they come to define the spirit of the time, and also give us an indication of where everything is headed. So for the next 20 minutes, we're going to take a journey through the space age to talk about three of those most important trends: convenience, engagement, and profitability. We'll start our journey by talking about convenience because a lot of conversations have heated up in this space thanks to the obvious rise in grocery e-commerce, as well as the arrival of the hotly debated quick commerce space. But it's a common misconception that speed alone equals convenience. In fact, sometimes speed can mean the opposite of convenience. Let's say I'm out running errands and I schedule my grocery delivery to arrive between 12:30 and 1 p.m. But instead it gets there 15 minutes early, so I haven't gotten home before my order arrives. It's fast, but it's certainly not convenient. In addition to speed, there are three other key components of convenient online grocery experiences. One's reliability. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with Picnic, which is a grocery retailer out of the Netherlands that's found success by leaning into pre-planned scheduled delivery routes. In fact, they found so much success that we're starting to see other retailers replicate this model as a means for providing reliability over speed. One example of that is Sonai out of Portugal. Reliability shouldn't only be measured by time, though. It should also be measured by how many times a customer's order arrives with exactly what they wanted. That combination of on-time and accurate is what Tomorrow Retail Consulting has coined the perfect order. Now, according to their research, quick commerce gets a ton of attention for their 15-minute or 30-minute delivery windows. But one of their overlooked differentiators is their ability to consistently deliver the perfect order. If you have a look at their data, it shows that retailers who fulfill from controlled environments, like, for example, quick commerce companies, they have an average on-time rate of 97.5%. When you compare that to omni retailers who fulfill from stores, that percentage drops to 95.2%. The companies that fulfill from controlled environments also outperform when it comes to availability. On that metric, those companies have a 99.2% average availability rate, whereas omni grocery retailers have a comparable rate of about 92.5%. Now, I'm not here to say that quick commerce is a silver bullet. Aside from some of the challenging economics that we've been talking about this week, one area where they don't typically measure up is breadth of assortment, which we view as another key component of convenience. Just as Fiji was talking about before, it's great to have that missing ingredient delivered in 15 minutes, but that's very specific in terms of the use case and what the customer need is. Rather, more often, it's more convenient for consumers to be able to choose from a wider selection of SKUs and then select the fulfillment or delivery option that best meets their current need. Now, if any of you guys joined us at Shop Talk Europe back in June, you would have heard from Tim Steiner, who's the CEO of Ocado. When I asked him if Ocado needed to deliver 15 minutes, offer a 15-minute delivery in order to compete, he argued that it's actually more convenient for consumers to have slightly slower delivery times if they're able to complete more of their shop in one place. Now, their Zoom service offers delivery about 10,000 SKUs in under an hour. It's a fraction of the total 50,000 SKUs that Ocado offers, but it still dwarfs the selection at quick commerce startups, where the average SKU count is about 2,000 to 4,000. Steiner argues that same-day delivery satisfies consumers' needs for both assortment and speed. We're starting to hear similar commentary from retailers in the US as well. In a world where there's so much focus on 15-minute delivery, it's starting to look like under 2 hours or same day is typically fast enough. In its latest earnings report, Albertsons said that penetration of its 2 hours or less delivery has increased fivefold over the past year. And Target's pointed to same-day delivery as one of the key drivers of its e-commerce growth as well. Now, finally, I want to talk about relevance. Now, I realize this one's a little bit of an outlier in this section because it's more related to basket building than the others. But it's still a key component of convenience if consumers can quickly and easily find items and add them to their baskets. And it's something we'll talk about a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Now, regardless of which attribute you think is most important for delivering convenience, it's fair to say we've seen an entire generation of VC-backed startups born on the premise of delivering convenience. Everything from meal kits and prepared meals to subscription-based e-commerce to pickup and delivery providers, including quick commerce. These businesses have, without a doubt, pushed the rest of the industry to innovate. But as we've seen with the recent spate of layoffs and earnings reports, it can be very hard to deliver convenience profitably for both startups and established companies alone. And it's certainly not getting any easier in today's economic climate, with the US teetering on the verge of a recession and consumers becoming a lot more concerned about their finances. If we go back to that initial premise, though, of redefining what convenience means, there are a number of ways that brands and retailers can leverage technology to create more convenient experiences in a way that doesn't dilute their bottom line. This framework right here outlines some of the specific tools and capabilities that companies can tap into, both online and offline, to provide convenience throughout the entire customer journey. Now, I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, but I did want to point out that we were sure to include some established providers on the list, but also some disruptive startups that you guys may not be familiar with, including a couple that we included on our startup pitch stage earlier this week. One example of that is under search and discovery. We featured a company called Jupiter, which enables food influencers to quickly and easily sell grocery and CPG products to their followers via a variety of local fulfillment options. And then under fulfillment and delivery, we have Order Grid, which is a company that offers turnkey dark store software that makes it much easier for retailers to stand up in-house fast delivery options. Now, of course, we would be remiss not to talk about the original people who sort of invented the convenience space, which, of course, are C-stores. According to the National Association of Convenience Stores, these retailers generated $706 billion in sales last year, with about 40% of that figure coming from inside non-fuel sales. Now, people often think about purchases at C-stores as being made on impulse, but interestingly enough, according to NACS, premeditated and en route purchases accounted for 80% of those sales in a typical year. Now, that data point alone underscores the importance of convenience retailers adopting new digital capabilities. You've already heard this week from a couple of the companies that we think are leading in innovation in this space. Foxtrot is one example. They have raised $160 million to build a modern convenience store that balances convenience and experience. Now, they get a lot of attention for their elevated store designs, but they've also built their own digital capabilities in-house, making it possible for them to offer 30-minute delivery and pickup in 5. Lyft is another innovative startup that's built fully autonomous stores over in Sweden that allow shoppers to get in and out without the hassle of waiting in line. Now, of course, the more sophisticated players are not standing by in this space idly. Of course, Quick Trip recently signed a deal with Amazon to license its Just Walk Out technology. And iFi has recently said that they are working now in 80 stores globally, including with the likes of Carrefour. And then outside of automated checkout, 2 years after launching its loyalty program, as we heard from Darren Rabelez yesterday, Casey's has already surpassed 5 million members who can use their points on fuel discounts, in-store purchases, or for charitable giving. And then 7-Eleven, of course, has also been a huge leader in this space, including its recent acquisition of Skipcart, which is a white label delivery startup providing same-day and on-demand delivery. These sorts of innovations are going to be critical to this industry moving forward as they continue to feel pressure from QSRs, traditional grocery retailers, delivery providers, and more. So to wrap this section, here are a couple of key takeaways. First up, reliability often trumps speed. In addition to some of the examples that I just shared, this thesis is also backed up by some survey data from CoreSite Research, which has found that consumers typically prioritize pre-planned deliveries that they know are going to arrive at a scheduled time over things that are incredibly super fast. Second, as convenience stores continue to get pressured from all angles, we view them as the grocery industry's next big wave of digital adopters. We're already starting to see this happen with some of the largest chains and some of the innovative VC-backed startups, but we expect to see this trickle down to some of the smaller and regional and family-owned chains in the coming years. And then finally, as grocery retailers reimagine what convenience is going to mean, new disruptive models are going to continue to push the limits on what defines convenience by combining several of the elements that we just talked about, like an easy ordering process, quick delivery times, and a consistent, reliable experience. A great example of this is Checkers out of South Africa. Their 60/60 service allows customers to place their orders in 60 seconds and have them delivered in 60 minutes. It's very likely that we're going to see similar sorts of innovation coming stateside in a couple of years. The next section we'll talk through today is engagement, and specifically engagement for the online grocery shopper. Now, if we think through the evolution of online grocery, it was created to provide exactly what we just talked about, right? Convenience. Of course, it took on another dimension during the pandemic when consumers also turned to online grocery shopping for safety. However, as grocery e-commerce matures, we view the next frontier of online grocery as something that also provides inspiration and engagement, which I know, ironically, in a lot of ways is the exact opposite of convenience. But we're already starting to see signs of this behavior in some adjacent industries. According to a recent industry article, internal research at Google shows that 40% of consumers prefer TikTok or Instagram over Google Search or Maps when they're trying to decide where they want to eat lunch. Instacart's recent addition of what they call shoppable carts, which are essentially bundles of products recommended by celebrities, retailers, or creators, is a signal of this trend making its way into grocery. Now, of course, this idea of engagement and discoverability isn't entirely new to our space. Companies have long recognized the importance of creating detailed and informative product detail pages and landing pages, especially to inspire consumers when they haven't necessarily tried a product before. Brands, retailers, and publishers have also long leveraged shoppable recipes for consumers to make it easy for them to discover entire meal solutions and order all the ingredients in one place. But I think what has changed is that we're starting to see this trend become a lot more sophisticated. Early adopters to video commerce like the Fresh Market and Albertsons are seeing success from partnering with solution providers like Firework. According to Firework, since launching its solution on the Fresh Market website, the retailer's seen a 97% conversion rate on its videos. Ethnic grocery retailer We is taking the idea of video-enabled commerce and social experiences one step farther by creating an immersive experience that feels a lot more like my Instagram feed than a grocery website. And then while the applications for grocery in the metaverse are not as obvious as they are in categories like fashion and beauty, we are seeing companies like Molson Coors and Carrefour experiment with this emerging space and what it might mean for their consumers in the future. Now, immersive online grocery experiences provide a lot of opportunities for retailers to engage with their consumers in new ways and to build up brand loyalty. But at the end of the day, they need to be done right. That effectively means they need to be relevant and grounded in data. If any of you guys attended our session on next level personalization tactics yesterday, you would have heard from the CEO of Zhao. They've built an app which allows consumers to fill out a survey of their likes, their dislikes, their dietary restrictions, and more. What's interesting, though, is as much attention as zero-party data gets these days, Zhao talks about the fact that leveraging the data that consumers provide proactively is not enough in and of itself. I'll give you a good example of why. If I am filling out a survey of my preferences, I probably have every good intention of eating a salad with grilled chicken on it every single night. But come time to check out, I'm going to make sure I've got ground beef and pounds of shredded cheese in my cart so that I can have Taco Tuesday. So suffice it to say, retailers need to build models that take into consideration not only consumers' stated preferences, but which also adopt their actual behaviors. It also needs to be easy for shoppers to transact. Now, I think about Pinterest here. The social app has long been known for fueling discovery, but to date, they haven't necessarily been able to turn that inspiration into conversion. That opportunity's actually been behind a lot of its recent strategic decisions, including their move to bring in a Google shopping executive as their new CEO. Now, when I think about the application of this in grocery, I think in a lot of ways, creating engaging experiences online is a lot like taking a page from stores by marrying ease and inspiration. This balance can be achieved by partnering with some of the types of solution providers that we talked about a little bit earlier. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about grocery retailers in this section, but I think it goes without saying that this is a massive opportunity for CPG brands as well, whether they're deciding to work directly with companies like Snap or Decentraland, or if they are participating in this space in collaboration with their retail partners. So to wrap this section, here are a couple of key takeaways. First up, please do not be afraid to challenge the notion of what grocery e-commerce is going to look like going forward. I think about this like traditional retailers when they were first moving online. They learned the hard way that replicating the in-store experience online is not going to meet consumer needs. And so I think very similarly, grocery retailers need to be open to experimenting with new ways to help consumers discover products that go beyond the traditional search bar and drop-down menu. Second, in order to create successful, engaging experiences, they need to make sure they're looking at the right data sets and also leveraging sophisticated solutions that provide relevant recommendations without simply creating an echo chamber. And then third, the retailers that successfully marry inspiration with ease online are going to be the ones that win. So I think we've been beating this drum all week, which is very un-shop talk and grocery shop-like, but clearly it's on everyone's minds, and it is profitability. And I want to start this conversation with where we are in the context of digital maturity with grocery e-commerce relative to COVID-19. Now, if we think back to the onset of the pandemic in 2020, grocery retailers were scrambling to bring new capabilities to market so that consumers could get the essential products that they needed. They were not worried about the product being perfect because launching and scaling these capabilities was simply a non-negotiable for consumers to get what they needed. I think here of this example of Sam's Club and how quickly they launched and rolled out curbside pickup. Now, of course, it also did not hurt that consumers were willing to pay a premium for digital products and services at this point in time in order to stay safe, or that they were racking up record levels of personal savings. Come 2021, we saw grocery retailers continue to iterate on the products that they'd brought to market the prior year. Now, fast forward to today, and we have hit an inflection point where profitability is front and center, causing companies to tweak their offerings in order to protect their bottom lines. It makes a lot of sense, right? Retailers today are getting hit from every single angle imaginable. In addition to paying more for labor and the products on their shelves, inflation is near a 40-year high, and the personal savings rate has fallen below pre-pandemic levels toward lows we haven't seen since the Great Recession. That means consumers are going to become a lot less accepting of paying more for their online grocery orders, putting a lot more pressure on retailers to find cost savings within their own businesses. Now, at the same time, companies are no longer getting credit for being growth stories at the expense of profitability. Now, as much as you read about grocery e-commerce sales growth slowing these days, it's important to remember that it's doing just that. It's slowing. It is not erasing its pandemic gains. If you look at this chart from Insider Intelligence, they forecast U.S. grocery e-commerce sales will increase roughly 16% this year to over $140 billion. That shakes out to about 10% of total grocery sales. By 2025, they expect online grocery revenues to touch nearly $212 billion, accounting for 14% of overall sales. Now, that is a far cry from the 3% penetration rate that online grocery had just 10 years earlier in 2015. Now, as online grocery penetration rises, as I mentioned before, retailers have no choice but to find cost savings within their own business to boost their profitability. I'm going to apologize in advance for this very cheesy space pun, but they're tapping into Ford tractor beams to lift up their profits. The first beam is introducing new technologies and capabilities that encourage shoppers to build bigger and more profitable baskets. Now, an obvious way to do this is increasing the order minimum, but a couple of other ways they're doing this is leveraging AI-based tools to generate personalized recommendations or promotions, or making improvements to the customer experience so that it's easier for consumers to find items and add them to their carts. They can also encourage higher margin baskets by promoting more profitable products on their digital properties, including their own private label brands, as well as some higher margin products from their CPG partners. The second beam is introducing alternate revenue streams. These include retail media networks, which we have been hearing about quite a bit this week, and are expected to account for almost 1 in 5 digital ad dollars by next year. Marketplaces are another category here, and white label technology solutions as well. Now, these opportunities are typically thought of in relation to grocery retailers, but there are also ways for CPG brands to get involved here. For example, AB InBev recently announced the launch of Bees, which is its B2B marketplace, which allows retailers to purchase its products as well as products from other CPG brands. Now, you probably skipped ahead here. The third beam is leveraging new technologies, capabilities, and partnerships that create efficiencies. And I think this is probably the most ominous bucket because there are so many different things that we could talk about here. I know we've heard a couple of speakers over the past couple of days talk about the opportunity for brands and retailers to work together to remove extra costs from the system, right? For example, stocking shelves with products that are just going to end up getting picked for e-commerce orders. They can also leverage technology that solves for both efficiency and sustainability. That was something really interesting that Natalie Knight from Ahold Delhaize talked about on our main stage. And quite frankly, we view this as a massive opportunity for the industry as folks like her in the CFO role start to have more accountability, not just for profitability metrics, but also for sustainability metrics. But for today, I'm going to zoom in on the two biggest cost centers for online grocery, which of course are fulfillment and delivery. Now, first up, the debate as to whether micro-fulfillment centers or massive CFCs are the best investment is starting to become more nuanced. MFCs do, in fact, require less lead time and fewer upfront costs, but when you think about this over time, they also lead to duplicative investments and maintenance costs across multiple sites. Rather than either approach being a silver bullet, it's starting to look like the most profitable long-term investment may differ depending on a company's value proposition and the individual market that they're operating in. Click and collect remains a larger part of the business for major retailers like Walmart and Kroger, who scaled this offering rapidly during the pandemic. However, recent data from Insider Intelligence shows that while click and collect is still gaining share versus delivery, its growth has slowed quite substantially and will still be hovering from a penetration perspective around 40% of total grocery e-commerce dollars by 2026. Now, obviously that slowdown is not great news for retailers since click and collect offers better margins than delivery. So double-clicking into delivery then, Tomorrow Retail Consulting analyzed 8 global grocery retailers who offer up to 4 different fulfillment methods. Now, I think what's interesting here, and it kind of jives with what we were hearing from Fiji earlier, is that there is relative parity between the contribution margin of next-day and same-day delivery. I thought that was a pretty interesting fact. And I asked their CEO, Jordan Burke, about it, and essentially what he said is when you're looking at this data, same-day tends to be more profitable in the US, right? There's geographical differences, because the last mile is heavily subsidized by tips and the gig economy. However, in Europe, grocery retailers have already achieved density in their next-day offering, so it's slightly more profitable, which ties in neatly to our last theme, which is scale. With greater scale, grocery e-commerce will leverage its cost base and enhance profitability. So I'll wrap this final section with a couple of key takeaways. First, as grocery e-commerce continues to grow, retailers will need to find ways to shore up their profitability. Outside of adding fulfillment and delivery charges, tactics include leveraging technologies to encourage bigger, more profitable baskets, introducing alternate revenue streams, optimizing fulfillment and delivery, and achieving scale. Second, in order to maximize profitability for the industry at large, brands need to have a seat at the table. By giving brands a voice, retailers have opportunities to strip even more inefficiencies out of the system, which will lift all boats. And finally, profitability and sustainability are no longer mutually exclusive. The most successful organizations will be the ones that don't live in silos and work toward common KPIs across both. So to conclude, it remains to be seen whether we'll all have flying cars or our own personal Rosie the Robot maids by the year 2062. But one thing that's for certain is innovation doesn't slow down. So rather than trying to stop this crazy thing, it's important to keep our minds open to the trends and technologies that will play a critical role in shaping grocery's future, like convenience, engagement, and profitability. The next generation of grocery isn't very far away, and it's up to all of you to bring us into the future. Thank you.